What if the secret to unending devotion was hidden in a forgotten medieval manuscript? What if a simple brew crafted centuries ago could bend the very will of another heart? What if from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, desperate souls sought forbidden remedies, claiming they could ignite passions where none existed? For centuries, people believed such things were possible. Number 8. The Verdant Vine of Unbreakable Bonds. In the tapestry of medieval life, where the rhythm of seasons dictated existence and the whisper of ancient trees carried untold secrets, the quest for love was often fraught with uncertainty. Marriages were frequently alliances of property or status rather than tender affections. For those yearning for a deeper connection, or perhaps to simply secure union, traditional methods often fell short. It was in this desperate space that the verdant vine, known to some as periwinkle, entered the shadowy world of purported love potions. Not just any periwinkle, mind you, but one gathered under specific astrological conditions. Ideally when the moon was waxing full, its silver light bathing the fields in an ethereal glow. Preparation of this particular concoction was steeped in ritual. A young woman, perhaps burdened by the unspoken affections of a suitor, or a knight seeking to secure the loyalty of a noble lady, would venture into the deepest parts of a forest or an abandoned garden. Periwinkle vine, with its deep green leaves and delicate blue-purple flowers, was not to be plucked carelessly. Medieval herbalists and folk practitioners insisted that the vine be severed from its roots with a silver knife, a metal believed to amplify the magical properties of plants. As the vine was cut, an incantation, often whispered and personal, would be uttered, calling upon forces unseen to bind the hearts of those intended. The belief was that the plant, having drawn its sustenance from the earth and the heavens, possessed an innate power to connect and intertwine, much like its creeping tendrils. Once gathered, the periwinkle was not simply crushed or boiled. Its leaves and flowers were meticulously dried in a dark, airy space away from the direct gaze of the sun, which was thought to diminish its subtle energies. After several weeks, when the plant had shriveled to a brittle crisp, it would be ground into a fine powder using a mortar and pestle made of polished stone, perhaps granite or marble. To this green dust, other ingredients were added, often varying by regional tradition or the specific advice of a local wise woman. Some recipes called for a pinch of dried rose petals, symbolizing love and beauty. Others included a sliver of ambergris, a waxy substance found in the intestines of sperm whales, believed to have powerful alluring properties due to its exotic origin and strong musky scent. The inclusion of such rare and expensive ingredients underscored the desperate hope invested in these potions, suggesting their efficacy was tied to their perceived value and rarity. The final form of this love potion was typically an infusion. Powdered mixture would be stirred into a goblet of wine, preferably red, symbolizing blood and life, or a cup of warm mead, a honey-based alcoholic beverage popular in the Middle Ages. The recipient, unaware of the potion's presence, would be offered the drink. The purported effect was gradual but potent. Initially, a subtle softening of disposition, a sudden inexplicable warmth toward the giver, a blossoming of affection that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Over time, the belief was that this warmth would deepen into an unshakable bond, a devotion so profound that the individual would be unable to conceive of a life without the one who administered the draught. Historical chronicles sometimes speak of sudden, passionate courtships that surprised onlookers, attributing them to unseen influences or the magic of love, which for some implied such secret remedies. The despair of unrequited love in medieval society was profound, often leading individuals to seek any means, natural or supernatural, to alter their fate. Periwinkle potion offered a whisper of hope in a world governed by rigid social structures and arranged marriages. However, when contemporary science, examines the ingredients of this verdant vine concoction, its findings diverge significantly from medieval beliefs. Periwinkle, while containing some alkaloids, is not known to possess properties that could scientifically influence human emotions or romantic attachment in the way described. Its compounds are not recognized by modern pharmacology as having any direct impact on desire or affection. The rose petals, though fragrant, are primarily for scent and flavor, and contain no known psychoactive components that would induce love. Ambergris, while historically used in perfumes for its fixative qualities and unique aroma, does not have any scientifically verified effect on human emotional bonds or attraction when ingested, and its primary compounds are not correlated with neurological pathways related to love. The wine or mead, certainly, could lower inhibitions due to alcohol content, but this effect is temporary and not specific to inducing lasting devotion towards a particular individual. Therefore, modern biological and chemical understanding does not provide a mechanism for the supposed effects of the verdant vine of unbreakable bonds potion. Number 7. The ensorcelled honey of the bee's kiss. In an era when honey was not merely a sweetener, but a symbol of purity, sweetness, and even immortality, it was perhaps inevitable that this golden nectar would find its way into the realm of medieval love potions. The ensorcelled honey of the bee's kiss was not just any honey, but honey from a specific hive, perhaps one known to be particularly prolific, or even one found in a wild, undisturbed grove far from human interference. The belief was that bees, being creatures of intricate social structure and diligent labor, imbued their honey with a concentrated essence of harmony and cooperation, qualities desirable in a loving partnership. The specific folklore often mandated that the honey be harvested on a moonless night, when the veil between worlds was thin, allowing mystical energies to seep into the substance. The crafting of this honey potion involved several layers of natural and ritualistic elements. The most crucial component beyond the honey itself was the inclusion of certain potent herbs. Among these, basil held a place of particular significance. In medieval times, basil was often associated with love and fertility, sometimes even being used in divination rituals concerning marriage. The fresh basil leaves were not merely tossed into the honey. They were carefully bruised, their aromatic oils released under the gentle pressure of a wooden spoon or the palm of a hand. This act was often accompanied by quiet, whispered intentions, each breath infusing the herb with the desired outcome. Another frequently added ingredient was rosemary, an herb traditionally linked with remembrance and fidelity. Sprigs of fresh rosemary, with their leaves, were sometimes steeped directly in the honey, or their essence extracted through a simple infusion before being added. Combination of basil and rosemary, both common garden herbs, made this potion relatively accessible to many, yet its power was believed to be no less significant than those requiring exotic components. To enhance the potion's purported potency, practitioners might also add a small amount of powdered or finely grated ginger. Ginger, with its warming and stimulating properties, was sometimes used in medieval medicine as a digestive aid and for general invigoration. In the context of love potions, its inclusion was thought to ignite a similar warmth and passion within the recipient, stirring dormant desires. The preparation often involved gently heating the honey, never to a boil but just enough to allow the herbs and spices to infuse thoroughly. This slow, low heat was believed to prevent the destruction of the delicate energies within the ingredients, while encouraging the blending of their essences. The mixture would then be allowed to cool and sit for several days in a sealed clay pot, buried perhaps, or simply placed in a dark, quiet corner of a dwelling, allowing the magic to steep and strengthen. The method of administration was often subtle and intertwined with everyday life. The ensorcelled honey would be spread on bread, mixed into a sweet pastry, or stirred into a warm drink like ale or spiced wine. The recipient would consume it unknowingly, its sweetness masking any peculiar herbal notes. The believed effect was profound and multifaceted. Initially, a feeling of deep contentment and happiness would wash over the individual, a sense of well-being that they would unconsciously associate with the giver. Over time, this pleasant sensation would blossom into a strong, inexplicable affection, a desire for the giver's presence, a yearning for their companionship. Tales from the era occasionally recounted how individuals, initially aloof or indifferent, would suddenly develop an intense devotion after sharing a meal or drink with someone who had been secretly using this honey. The narrative often highlighted a change in demeanor, a newfound tenderness, and an undeniable attraction that transcended previous disinterest. Such stories provided solace and a sense of agency to those who felt powerless in matters of the heart. Yet, when modern scientific analysis turns its gaze upon the ingredients of the ensorcelled honey of the bee's kiss, the purported effects find no contemporary support. Honey, while a natural and nutritious food, contains no known compounds that could chemically induce love, affection, or emotional attachment. Basil and rosemary, while possessing some andontic and anti-inflammatory properties, are not recognized by current pharmacology as having any psychoactive effects that would alter romantic feelings. Ginger, although a stimulant in some contexts, does not possess properties that could influence human emotions or relationships in the way described. The act of infusing these ingredients into honey, even under specific ritualistic conditions, does not create new chemical compounds with such capabilities. The sweetness of the honey might evoke a pleasant taste experience, and the aroma of the herbs might be appealing, but these sensory inputs do not translate into programmed devotion. Therefore, modern scientific understanding offers no mechanism by which these ingredients could generate the complex emotional responses of love or lasting affection. Number 6. The alchemist's avian adoration. Elixir. The use of animal parts in medieval magic and medicine was widespread, driven by the belief that creatures possessed specific essences or virtues that could be transferred to humans. For matters of the heart, the dove, a symbol of purity, peace, and fidelity, since antiquity became a prime candidate for a love potion. The alchemist's avian adoration elixir was not merely a symbolic inclusion of a dove, it purportedly required the actual heart of a specific dove, one that had been bred for affection or observed to be particularly devoted to its mate. The ritual often demanded that the dove be sacrificed at dawn, a time when the world awakened, symbolizing new beginnings and the stirring of fresh emotions. The heart was to be carefully removed, still warm, and handled with reverence, for it was believed to contain the very essence of love's fidelity. Preparation of this elixir was intricate and unsettling by modern standards. The freshly removed dove's heart was not simply added to a mixture. It was often macerated, sometimes even roasted or dried, and then ground into a fine powder. This process was believed to concentrate the intrinsic love energy of the dove. To this powdered heart, other ingredients were added to enhance its potency. Common addition was the blood of a specific black bat captured under a waning moon. Bats were often associated with the night, with secrets, and with hidden powers, making their blood a potent, albeit sinister, component in many medieval magical recipes. A few drops of this bat's blood were mixed with the dove's heart powder, creating a dark, viscous paste. Combination of the symbol of innocent love, dove, and the creature of the night, bat, was believed to create a powerful, irresistible attraction, blending purity with the mysterious forces of desire. Further ingredients were often added to bind and activate these animal essences. Dried vervain, an herb long associated with magic and protection, was frequently included. It was believed to provide a powerful spiritual anchor for the potion, ensuring its effects were lasting. The vervain was typically gathered at the summer solstice, when its magical properties were thought to be at their peak. It would be dried and powdered, then stirred into the dove heart and bat blood mixture. Sometimes a pinch of powdered pearl was also incorporated. Pearls, products of the sea and symbols of purity and hidden beauty, were thought to add a luminous quality to the love, making the recipient's affection radiant and true. The final mixture was then carefully blended with pure spring water, collected from a natural source untouched by human hands, and allowed to steep for a lunar cycle, often kept in a sealed vial carved from a single piece of dark wood or bone, believed to amplify the potion's arcane properties. The administration of this elixir was often done surreptitiously. Due to its unusual and often unsavory ingredients, it was not directly consumed. Instead, a few drops might be discreetly added to the recipient's food, perhaps stirred into a soup or drizzled over a piece of meat, its dark color masked by gravy or other strong flavors. Alternatively, some practitioners suggested applying a small amount to the recipient's clothing, especially near the heart, or to an object they frequently touched, such as a favorite book or a personal trinket. The purported effect was dramatic and swift. Within days, the recipient would experience a powerful, almost obsessive longing for the giver. Their thoughts would purportedly be consumed by the individual, leading to a sudden and overwhelming desire for their presence and affection. Chronicles of the era sometimes describe individuals who, previously indifferent or even hostile, would inexplicably become deeply enamored, their sudden change in heart baffling to those who observed them. Such transformations were often attributed to the powerful unseen forces at play in medieval folk magic. However, when modern scientific inquiry examines the components of the alchemist's Athenian adoration elixir, no basis for its purported effects can be found. The heart of a dove, like any animal organ, is composed of muscle tissue, fats, and proteins. It contains no known compounds that could induce love or emotional attachment in a human when ingested. Bat blood, similarly, is composed of typical biological materials and lacks any identified properties that could influence human emotions or romantic desire. Vervain, while used in traditional medicine for various ailments, has no scientifically recognized psychoactive properties that would lead to infatuation. Pearl powder, primarily calcium carbonate, is biologically inert in terms of emotional influence. Combination of these substances, even if consumed, would not create any known chemical or biological reaction within the human body that could lead to the complex emotional state of love or obsession. Modern biology and pharmacology do not recognize any mechanism by which animal organs or blood, or these specific herbal and mineral additions, could alter human romantic inclinations in the way described by medieval beliefs. Number 5. The lunar bloom of desperate desire. In the moon-drenched nights of the medieval world, celestial bodies were not just distant lights, but powerful influences on earthly life, guiding harvests, predicting tides, and, crucially, shaping human destiny. The moon, with its cyclical phases and mystical glow, was a particularly potent symbol, often associated with emotions, intuition, and hidden desires. The lunar bloom of desperate desire was a potion deeply entwined with lunar cycles, believing that the moon's energy could imbue specific herbs with the power to awaken fervent love. The central ingredient was the bloom of the night-blooming cereus, a rare and exquisite flower that opens only once a year, at night, under the full moon, for a few precious hours. Its ephemeral beauty and elusive nature made it a symbol of powerful, fleeting opportunity, perfect for a potion meant to seize the moment of desire. The gathering of the night-blooming cereus was a ritual in itself. A hopeful suitor or a desperate lover would journey to where these rare plants might be found, often in secluded, wild gardens or ancient groves. The flower had to be plucked at the precise moment of its fullest bloom, usually around midnight, as the full moon shone directly overhead. It was believed that the moonlight infused the petals with a concentrated essence of emotional potency. Once gathered, the delicate petals were not to be directly touched by human hands for long. They were quickly placed into a small, dark glass vial, sometimes filled with dew collected from untouched meadows just before sunrise, believed to be celestial water unblemished by earthly impurities. This dew was thought to capture the very essence of dawn's hopeful light and the moon's nightly energy. Beyond the rare cereus, other elements were incorporated to amplify the potion's effect. A small piece of human hair, ideally from the intended recipient, was considered a vital component. The hair was believed to carry the essence of the person's very being, acting as a direct conduit for the potion's influence. It would be carefully placed into the vial with the cereus petals and moondew. To bind these elements, a finely powdered mineral, often crushed malachite or lapis lazuli, was sometimes added. These stones, with their deep green and blue hues, were associated with transformation and truth in medieval folklore, and their presence was thought to make the potion's effects both potent and enduring. The entire mixture would then be sealed and left exposed to the light of the full moon for 3 consecutive nights, allowing the lunar energies to purportedly charge and integrate the diverse ingredients. The administration of the lunar bloom potion was delicate and often clandestine. The liquid, sometimes strained to remove the solid components, was often applied externally, not consumed. A few drops might be gently dabbed onto the recipient's pillow while they slept, or subtly infused into their bathwater. Some practitioners suggested applying it to an amulet or charm that the recipient wore close to their skin. The belief was that the potion, once absorbed through the skin or inhaled, would seep into the person's spirit, gradually altering their affections. The purported effect was a gentle but persistent awakening of desire. The recipient would reportedly find themselves increasingly drawn to the giver, experiencing a strange sense of comfort and longing in their presence. Dreams might become filled with images of the giver, and waking thoughts would turn frequently to them, culminating in a powerful, undeniable yearning. Stories circulated of individuals who, after exposure to such lunar infusions, found their hearts suddenly captivated by someone they had previously regarded with indifference, a change attributed to the moon's subtle, undeniable sway. However, when modern scientific analysis examines the ingredients of the lunar bloom of desperate desire, no scientific basis for its reported effects can be found. Night-blooming cereus, while beautiful, contains no known compounds that could scientifically induce love, desire, or emotional attachment in a human. Its ephemeral bloom and specific growing conditions are ecological traits, not indicators of mystical properties. Dew collected from meadows, while a natural phenomenon, is simply water and contains no inherent celestial or emotionally altering properties. Human hair, primarily composed of keratin, is biologically inert in terms of influencing another person's emotions or will. Crushed malachite and lapis lazuli, composed of copper carbonate and various silicates respectively, are mineral compounds with no known psychoactive or emotional altering effects when applied externally or ingested. The act of charging these ingredients under moonlight, while a deeply held medieval belief, does not introduce new chemical properties or biological mechanisms that could alter human emotions or romantic inclinations. Therefore, modern biology, chemistry, and pharmacology offer no explanation for how these components could generate the complex emotional responses of love or desire. Number 4. The corpse flower's breath of eternal devotion. In the medieval imagination, the boundary between life and death was often permeable, and the power of the departed was sometimes invoked for earthly ends. Grave dust, collected from ancient burial grounds, was believed to carry the lingering essence of the dead, imbuing it with a mysterious power over the living. Corpse flower's breath of eternal devotion was a particularly unsettling potion, relying on the morbid components of human remains to purportedly bind hearts forever. The central ingredient was grave dust, specifically sought from the tomb of a person who had reputedly died of a broken heart or unrequited love, as their lingering sorrow was believed to concentrate a powerful longing that could be transferred. This grim ingredient was believed to hold the key to unshakeable, eternal affection. Collection of the grave dust was a clandestine and often fearful affair, typically performed under the cloak of night, perhaps at the new moon when the darkness was deepest. A small amount of earth from a specific grave would be carefully scraped into a pouch, often with whispered prayers or incantations to appease the spirit of the deceased. To this eerie dust, other ingredients were added to intensify its purported effects. A particularly potent addition was a fragment of bone, typically from the finger or toe of a long-buried corpse, ground into a fine powder. The belief was that the bones, being the last remnants of a person, held their most enduring essence, and that grinding them would release this concentrated energy. The combination of grave dust and bone powder created a morbid foundation for the potion, emphasizing a connection that transcended even death itself. To temper the grimness and bind these elements into a potion of love, more appealing substances were sometimes included. Common addition was the sap of a willow tree, known for its flexible branches and association with sorrowful longing in folklore, yet also resilience. The willow sap was believed to act as a medium, carrying the eternal longing of the grave dust into the recipient. It was collected carefully, sometimes by cutting into the bark of an old willow on a riverside, believing the running water symbolized a constant flow of emotion. Another surprising element was a drop of pure wild honey, meant to sweeten the morbid components and make the resulting affection palatable. The honey was believed to transform the potentially dark essence into something alluring and tender. The mixture of grave dust, bone powder, willow sap, and honey would then be carefully steeped in a liquid often consecrated wine, or even in more extreme cases, water drawn from a church font for several days, allowing the essences to mingle and strengthen. The method of administering the corpse flower's breath was often deeply disturbing. Reflecting its dark origins because of its components, it was rarely consumed directly. Instead, a small amount of the liquid, or even the powdered remnants, might be sprinkled onto the threshold of the intended recipient's dwelling, believing that stepping over it would allow the potion to seep into their spirit. In more desperate cases, it was said that a tiny amount could be mixed into the recipient's food, masked by strong flavors, hoping to bypass their defenses. Purported effect was an unshakable, almost fated devotion. The recipient would reportedly feel an inexplicable pull towards the giver, a longing so profound it felt as though it had always existed, a bond that transcended rational thought. Medieval accounts sometimes spoke of sudden dramatic transformations in individuals, leading them to abandon previous attachments and dedicate themselves entirely to a new love, attributing these shifts to forces beyond human understanding, often with a hint of dread for the potion's immense power. However, when modern scientific analysis examines the components of the corpse flower's breath of eternal devotion, no scientific support for its purported effects can be found. Grave dust, being primarily soil, contains various organic and inorganic materials, but none are known to possess properties that could influence human emotions or romantic attachment. Human bone, primarily calcium phosphate, is biologically inert in this context. Grinding it does not release any compounds that could affect love or desire. Willow sap contains various plant compounds, including salicylates, from which aspirin is derived, but none are known to induce emotional attachment or alter romantic feelings. Honey, as previously discussed, is a nutritious food but lacks any properties that could chemically induce love. The combination of these substances, regardless of their ritualistic collection or preparation, would not create any known chemical or biological reaction within the human body or environment that could lead to the complex emotional state of love or obsession. Modern toxicology and pharmacology do not recognize any mechanism by which these ingredients could generate such profound and lasting emotional responses. Number 3. The witch's kiss of serpent's allure. In the rich tapestry of medieval folklore, serpents and dragons often symbolized primal power, temptation, and transformation. For some, their enigmatic nature made them ideal if dangerous components for potions, seeking to ignite passionate, almost irresistible love. The witch's kiss of serpent's allure was a particularly fearsome and revered concoction, rumored to draw upon the venomous essence of the viper to compel devotion. It was not the venom itself that was sought, but a specific part of the snake believed to embody its alluring and captivating nature. The central ingredient was the dried, powdered skin of a shed viper, specifically one found in a sun-drenched rocky crevice, where its energy was thought to be most concentrated. The belief was that the shedding of skin symbolized rebirth and transformation, imbuing the potion with the power to change hearts and minds. Collection of the viper's shed skin was a perilous task, often performed by those who dealt in dark arts or possessed unusual courage. The skin, once found, had to be carefully dried, sometimes over a slow, smoldering fire of enchanted wood, like oak or hawthorn, known for their protective and magical properties. After thorough drying, it would be painstakingly ground into an extremely fine, almost invisible powder. To this powerful base, other potent ingredients were added. A common and controversial addition was the Spanish fly, derived from blister beetles, specifically Lida vesicatoria. In medieval times, this substance was known to cause irritation and blistering upon contact with skin, and when ingested, it was believed to cause intense internal warmth and stimulation. Though dangerous, its purported effects were twisted to imply an aphrodisiac quality, a fiery passion it supposedly kindled. The inclusion of Spanish fly highlighted the desperate and often hazardous nature of the pursuit of love to such means. To bind the serpent's power and the Spanish fly's fiery nature, other elements were often integrated. A few drops of the blood of a wild black cat, known for its elusive nature and association with witchcraft, were sometimes added. Cat's blood was thought to bring cunning and a wild, untamable passion to the potion. The drops were typically drawn on a specific night, perhaps during a thunderstorm, to capture untamed energy. Another element was a pinch of sulfur, a mineral with a distinctive odor, often associated with the underworld and powerful elemental forces. Its inclusion was believed to give the potion an explosive, compelling quality. The dried viper skin, Spanish fly, cat's blood, and sulfur would then be mixed with a strong alcoholic spirit, like distilled wine or a potent ale, and left to steep for a period of at least 7 days, sometimes buried in consecrated ground to amplify its hidden powers. The administration of the witch's kiss was exceedingly dangerous, often involving extreme stealth. Due to the known toxicity of some of its components, it was rarely given in large doses. A tiny amount, perhaps a single drop or a minuscule pinch of the powder, would be discreetly added to the recipient's drink, usually a highly flavored one, like spiced wine or mead. To mask its taste and appearance, the purported effect was immediate and overwhelming. The recipient would reportedly feel an intense, almost feverish desire for the giver, a burning passion that seemed to consume their thoughts and actions. Medieval chronicles sometimes whispered of individuals who, after unknowingly consuming such a potion, would fall into a sudden, inexplicable obsession, their minds consumed by a singular consuming desire for the individual who had administered the draught, their rational faculties seeming overridden by an irresistible compulsion. Such accounts often carried a cautionary undertone, highlighting the terrible power of these forbidden remedies. However, when modern scientific analysis examines the components of the witch's kiss of serpent's allure, the findings are stark and cautionary. Dried viper skin, primarily composed of keratin and other biological materials, contains no known compounds that could induce love or emotional attachment. Spanish fly, derived from blister beetles, contains cantharidin, a highly toxic chemical that causes severe irritation, blistering, and inflammation of mucous membranes. When ingested, cantharidin is extremely dangerous, leading to pain, internal bleeding, kidney damage, and can even be fatal. While it might cause sensations in the genital area due to irritation, it does not induce genuine sexual desire or emotional attachment. Its effects are purely physiological and harmful. Black cat's blood, like any animal blood, is composed of cells, proteins, and other biological fluids, and contains no properties that could influence human emotions or romantic feelings. Sulfur, a common element, is not known to possess any properties that could induce love or obsession. Combination of these substances, particularly with the inclusion of a potent toxin like cantharidin, presents a severe health risk and offers no scientifically plausible mechanism for inducing emotional love or lasting affection. Modern toxicology emphatically warns against the consumption of such mixtures. Number 2. The Hag's Brew of Crimson Compassion. Among the most potent and feared of medieval love potions were those that incorporated human bodily fluids, specifically blood. The Hag's Brew of Crimson Compassion was a particularly unsettling concoction, rooted in the ancient belief that blood carried the very essence of a person's life force and emotional being. The most controversial and frequently invoked ingredient for this potion was menstrual blood, specifically from the giver. It was believed that menstrual blood, being a part of a woman's reproductive cycle, held a profound fertile energy that could powerfully bind a man to her, forging an unbreakable and often obsessive connection. The secrecy surrounding its collection and use added to its mystique and perceived potency. The gathering of menstrual blood was a highly personal and clandestine act. A woman desperate to secure a man's affection or return his wandering gaze would collect a small amount of her own blood, often during the first day of her cycle, believing this to be the most potent and fresh. To this primary controversial ingredient, other components were added to enhance its binding power. Common addition was a small piece of the giver's own nail clippings or hair, finely powdered. These personal remnants were thought to create a direct and intimate link between the giver and the recipient, ensuring the potion's effects were specific and profound. The logic was that since these were parts of the person themselves, they would act as a powerful conduit for the potion's influence, creating an almost inescapable bond. To make the brew more palatable and to subtly mask its unsettling nature, various pleasant elements were often included. Powdered cinnamon, a beloved spice, known for its warming properties and sweet aroma, was a frequent addition. It was believed to add warmth and passion to the desired affection, making it more fiery and compelling. A few drops of rose water, symbolizing love and beauty, were also often mixed in, believed to soften the potion's edge and imbue the resulting affection with tenderness. The menstrual blood, personal remnants, cinnamon, and rose water would then be carefully combined, sometimes in a small lead pot. Lead was mistakenly believed to have alchemical properties of transformation in some medieval text, and slowly heated over a gentle flame, never allowed to boil. The mixture would be stirred with a twig from a willow tree, again a tree associated with sorrow and emotional depth, for a period of time, perhaps under the influence of chanted words or silent intentions. The administration of the Hag's Brew was always done surreptitiously, typically by adding a tiny amount to the recipient's food or drink. It was often disguised in dark-colored liquids like spiced wine, coffee like brews made from roasted grains, or rich stews, where its appearance would be less noticeable. The purported effect was immediate and overwhelming. The recipient would reportedly feel an intense, almost feverish desire for the giver, a burning passion that seemed to consume their thoughts and actions. Medieval chronicles sometimes whispered of individuals who, after unknowingly consuming such a potion, would fall into a sudden, inexplicable obsession, their minds consumed by a singular consuming desire for the individual who had administered the draught, their rational faculties seemingly overridden by an irresistible compulsion. Such accounts often carried a cautionary undertone, highlighting the terrible power of these forbidden remedies and the dangerous ethical implications of attempting to control another's will. However, when modern scientific analysis examines the components of the Haig's brew of crimson compassion, no scientific basis for its purported effects can be found. Menstrual blood, like any human blood, is composed of cells, proteins, and other biological fluids. While rich in nutrients and biological markers, it contains no known compounds that could scientifically induce love, desire, or emotional attachment when consumed. Composition does not include any psychoactive or emotional-altering substances. Hair and nail clippings, primarily composed of keratin, are biologically inert in this context. Consuming them does not transfer essence or influence emotion. Cinnamon, while a flavorful spice with some health benefits, does not possess properties that could influence human emotions or romantic feelings. Rose water, primarily scented water, also lacks any such properties. Combination of these substances, regardless of their ritualistic collection or preparation, would not create any known chemical or biological reaction within the human body that could lead to the complex emotional state of love or obsession. Modern biology, toxicology, and pharmacology do not recognize any mechanism by which these human biological materials or herbal additions could generate such profound and lasting emotional responses. Number 1. The Mandrake's Lament of Unending Affection. Perhaps no single ingredient in medieval folklore is as steeped in mystery, power, and dread as the mandrake root. Its anthropomorphic shape, often resembling a human figure, gave rise to a wealth of myths, including the belief that it screamed when pulled from the earth and that its possession granted immense magical power. For love potions, the mandrake was considered the ultimate, most potent ingredient, believed to compel an unshakable, profound affection almost bordering on obsession. The mandrake's lament of unending affection was not just a potion. It was a legend, a whispered promise of absolute control over another's heart, but also a stark warning of the dangers of dabbling with such potent magic. The root used was almost always male, as it was thought to be more potent and enduring in its effects. The harvesting of the mandrake root was shrouded in elaborate and often dangerous rituals. It was said that the mandrake had to be pulled from the ground during a full moon, using a black dog tied to it by a rope, while the gatherer plugged their ears with wax to avoid the plant's deadly shriek. The dog, it was believed, would die from the shriek, thus sacrificing itself for the root's power. Once harvested, the root was often baptized in milk and wine to cleanse it and activate its powers. It was then dried in a very specific way, often hung in a chimney or a dark, warm place, to preserve its form and potency. This dried root was then painstakingly ground into a fine powder, a process that could take days, all while maintaining a reverent silence to ensure the root's power remained intact. To this potent mandrake powder, other ingredients were added to intensify its effects and tailor the specific type of affection desired. Common addition was a small amount of powdered human fingerbone, specifically from a person who had died young, believed to hold an enduring youthful essence and intense yearning. This macabre ingredient was thought to ensure the affection was eternal and vibrant. Another element was the dried blood of a freshly killed black hen, a creature often associated with sacrifice and dark magic. The hen's blood was believed to provide a living, pulsating energy to the potion, making the recipient's love active and passionate. Combination of mandrake, human bone, and hen's blood created a formidable, unsettling foundation for the potion. To bind these powerful and often dangerous elements, gentler, yet still symbolically rich ingredients were included. A few drops of virgin's tears, carefully collected, were sometimes added, believed to represent purity and unblemished emotion. These tears were thought to temper the potion's darker aspects and ensure the love was true despite its compelling nature. Fresh spring water, collected at dawn from a source known for its purity, was also added as the main liquid base. The entire mixture, the powdered mandrake, bone hen's blood, virgin's tears, and spring water, would then be placed in a crucible made of clay or iron and left to ferment or ripen in a dark, cool place for weeks, even months, occasionally stirred with a specific wooden spoon carved from a piece of yew, a tree associated with death and eternity. The administration of the mandrake's lament was often the most perilous part. Due to the known toxic properties attributed to mandrake, even in medieval times, it was rarely given directly in large amounts. A tiny amount of the liquid or a minuscule pinch of the powder might be discreetly added to the recipient's drink, usually a strong ale or spiced wine to mask its taste and appearance. Purported effect was immediate and overwhelming, manifesting as an unshakable, almost fated devotion. The recipient would reportedly feel an inexplicable pull towards the giver, a longing so profound it felt as though it had always existed, a bond that transcended rational thought and became an all-consuming obsession. Medieval chronicles, often cloaked in superstition and fear, whispered of individuals who, after unknowingly consuming such a potion, would fall into a sudden, inexplicable obsession, their minds consumed by a singular, consuming desire for the individual who had administered the draught, their rational faculties. Such accounts often carried a cautionary tone, highlighting the terrible power of these forbidden remedies and the ultimate price one might pay for interfering with destiny. However, when modern scientific analysis examines the components of the mandrake's lament of unending affection, the findings are clear regarding its potential for harm, but absent regarding its purported romantic effects. Mandrake, Mandragora officinarum, contains potent tropane alkaloids such as atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine. These compounds are highly toxic and have significant anticholinergic effects on the human body, leading to symptoms like hallucinations, delirium, blurred vision, dry mouth, increased heart rate, and fever in higher doses. Mandrake can be fatal. While these effects might create an altered state of consciousness or confusion, they do not induce genuine love or emotional attachment. Human bone, primarily calcium phosphate, is biologically inert in this context. Hen's blood, like any animal blood, is composed of cells, proteins, and other biological fluids, and contains no properties that could influence human emotions or romantic feelings. Tears are primarily water and salts, and possess no known properties that could induce love. Combination of these substances, especially with the inclusion of a highly toxic plant like mandrake, presents a severe health risk and offers no scientifically plausible mechanism for inducing emotional love or lasting affection. Modern toxicology and pharmacology do not recognize any pathway by which these ingredients could generate such profound and lasting emotional responses.